Managing the layout programmatically can be quite time-consuming and verbose on Android. Even though Kotlin spares you of calling findViewById, accessing views in the activity code can still get pretty ugly. When you use data binding, you can do most of the UI-related stuff right in your XML layouts. With LiveData, data binding becomes even more powerful and simple to use. While you could create observable fields even in the past when LiveData didn't exist, this new lifecycle-aware observable makes your data binding even better and simpler. Hello, welcome to ResoCoder. In this tutorial you are going to learn how to use one-way and two-way data binding with LiveData and also model view model architecture, and you can learn more about MVVM by clicking on the card in the corner. In this particular tutorial we are gonna build this simple app which has only one activity, but it has one-way and two-way data binding. So when we press on this change fruit, we are changing the fruit name in this text view above, but we aren't doing that directly, we are doing that all through data binding and LiveData. So this text view is only set once the LiveData changes. So we are observing for the changes in LiveData, and then we are updating the text view all through the data binding. Then over here we have two-way data binding, so we can enter a fruit name or some other name. So for example, cherry, and you can see that as soon as we start typing we have a toast down here which is going to say cherry because or chers because I have the wrong keyboard right now. I have QWERTZ instead of QWERTY keyboard because this is a two-way data binding, so whatever we write over here it gets automatically reflected in the LiveData, the underlying LiveData for the two-way data binding. And whenever the LiveData changes, we are displaying a toast. And the toast is displayed for every change, so that's why you can see every single letter that's changed since the last time. And then we can take this text and display it below. So we are taking edit text content and displaying it in this text view below. And then we can also select a random fruit for edit text. And yeah, so that's how two-way data binding works. The user can edit it and it's gonna be reflected in the data of the app. And also we can modify the data of the app and it's gonna be reflected in the UI which user can see. That's why it's called two-way data binding. Alright, so now let's create a new Android project. We're gonna start with empty activity and we're gonna call this data binding. And we don't need to include navigation controller, but we can do that, it's not going to hurt. And if you want to learn more about this navigation controller, you can check out the video by clicking on the card in the corner. Also, make sure that you have the Kotlin as the language. Alright, as a first thing, let's close all of the files which are open now. We're gonna come back to most of them later. And let's go to Gradle scripts and then build.gradle for the module app. And we need to implement some plugins. First, we are probably going to update the versions of outdated libraries. So just hit Alt-Enter, as you can also see above here. Show intention actions with Alt-Enter, and we are gonna change the app compat to RCO2. That's just a good practice to do whenever you are starting a new project, to immediately update all of your plugins to the latest versions. Now I'm going to paste one line which you also need to have over here for one implementation of a plugin, and it's Android Arc Lifecycle Extensions. And if you don't want to type this in here, you can get the code from the link in the video description, which is gonna take you to resocoder.com. Then I am also going to paste here this library, which is the material library. If you want to learn more about the so-called material design 2.0, you can check out my video by clicking on the card in the corner. And this is not really mandatory, it's just that you can look on something nice and not just some bland old material design, but some new exciting material design with rounded corners and all of that. Now it's probably a good idea to hit the Sing Now button in the corner. Now we can close the build.gradle and let's open up res, layout, and then activity main.xml. We are going to go over to the text tab, and we are basically going to delete everything that's inside here because we are gonna write something else because we are gonna use data binding. And also you need to have at least 3.2 version of the Android Studio. So if you have some lower version like 3.1, just upgrade to the newest version. Me personally, I am using Android Studio 3.3 Canary version, but if you have anything later than 3.2, you should be good to go with LiveData and data binding together. Because we are using data binding, we cannot have just the regular old layout. We actually need to start the layout with a tag called layout. And then we are gonna give this layout tag these following attributes. So again, you can get the code from the link in the video description. And data binding is all about putting more stuff inside the layout of the activity and not inside the activity class. So we need to be able to communicate with some kind of data for our app. Because we are using the MVVM architecture in this tutorial. And if you want to check out what MVVM is all about, you can check out the video by clicking on the card in the corner. But because we need to communicate with something inside our code, we need to put a data tag over here. And inside this data tag, we are going to have all of our variables, which we can use inside this layout. And in our case, the name of our variable will be a viewModel, just like this. And its type is going to be a type which is not currently present, but it's going to be called com.resocoder.dataBinding, and it's going to be main viewModel. Now it's gonna give us an error, but we are gonna fix it pretty soon. So this is the viewModel which we will be using for our data in this layout. Now comes the part that you are probably familiar with, and that is the actual constraint layout. So we are gonna put it inside here. Its width will be match parent and the height will be also match parent. And the tools context for this layout will be main activity. Now I'm gonna start pasting the individual views inside of this layout because there is no point in writing them out manually because that would bore you to craziness. So we have the first text view. Its ID is text view, but that ID, we aren't gonna use this ID in our code. This is just here so that other views can be anchored to it in this layout because we are using the constraint layout, and constraint layout needs some anchors for other views, right? As you probably know. What's really important here is that the text is set to be bound to the viewModel current random fruit name. And don't worry, we are gonna create this viewModel in just a little while. Basically, what this does is that this is, by the way, LiveData, so current random fruit name is LiveData, and whenever the LiveData current random fruit name changes, its value is going to be applied to the text property of this text view. So whenever our fruit name changes, the text will also change. That's it, that's all there is to this text view. Then, next up, we will have a button. Pay attention to this onClick property of our button. It says that whenever we click on that button, we are going to call viewModel.onChangeRandomFruitClick function. This is how you call something inside your data binding layouts. We are again using the same syntax, so again at and then curly braces, but instead of doing something like this, where we have just viewModel and then the name of the property inside the viewModel, we are using brace, then arrow, and then the name of the function. And I've just noticed that this button doesn't look great. So let's go over to values, styles, and let's actually set the theme to not be from app.compat, but rather material components. And we're gonna save it. And now when we come back, the layout, or actually the button, should look much better. Now let's paste in another view, and this is the edit text, which will participate in the two-way data binding. And the two-way data binding is signified by this equal sign after the @ symbol. As you can see here, there is only the @ symbol in the onClick. Above, in the text view for the random fruit name, there is also just the @ symbol. But here in the edit text, because we are using two-way data binding, we have @ and equals. The two-way data binding works just as I described previously. So basically, when the user types something inside this edit text, the underlying edit text content property, which is LiveData, will be changed. And also, when this edit text content is changed inside our code, it's going to be reflected, the change is going to be reflected in this text view. That's why it's called two-way data binding. After this text view, we have another button, and this one button is for displaying edit text content. So it's gonna take whatever is inside this edit text, but actually it's not gonna take it from the edit text. It's rather going to take this value from the edit text content property, which we will have on the view model. We aren't directly operating with the layout views, we are operating with their properties, with their underlying properties inside the view model, and those properties are represented as live data. So we aren't pulling anything directly from the UI. We let the UI change our data inside our view models. That's the powerful thing about using data binding. So basically, whenever we click this last button, it's going to display whatever is the content of the edit text below inside the text view, which we are gonna have in just a bit. So this is the text view, which will have the value displayed, whatever is inside this edit text. And then lastly, we will have the last button, which is also the last view inside this layout file. So here it is, and this button will be for selecting a random fruit and displaying it inside this edit text, just like we select random fruit with the first button and display it in the text view above. So this is gonna do the same thing, but it's going to display the random fruit value inside our edit text. And again, we are not gonna directly modify the text of the edit text, but we are gonna modify the edit text content live data to change also the value that is displayed inside this edit text. Alright, with the activity main XML done, let's create the backend for our app, because what kind of an app would this be if it didn't have a backend? Yes, I know that this is only a tutorial, and that's why we are gonna have a fake backend, and we are gonna create this backend in the form of a repository. And if you don't know what a repository is, it's the single source of truth for our view models. And really, if you don't know what that is, you should probably check out my tutorial on MVVM, where I explain it to the full extent. So now let's create a new Kotlin class, and its name will, or actually not class, it's gonna be an object, because there can be only one instance of our repository, and its name will be simply fake repository. Inside this fake repository, we are gonna have a private val fruit names, which is gonna look something like this. So we have apple, banana, orange, and all of that stuff. This is only a simple list of strings, and this is something that is representing a fake real database, because we aren't using any like Room database or SQLite database. Room is basically a layer on top of SQLite. We aren't using Firebase here. We are just using simple list because we want to keep this simple. And again, you can get the code from the link in the video description. So if you want to check this code out on your own pace, you can do so by going to resocoder.com. Now we're going to have private val current random fruit name, and it's going to start with underscore, and it's going to be equal to mutable live data of type string. Then, because this is only private and also Let's instantiate this mutable live data. And because this current random fruit name is private, we also need to have a public val current random fruit name. And why we are doing this is because we don't want to expose mutable live data to outside classes, because mutable live data's value can be changed. We only want to expose live data which value cannot be changed. So we only want to change the value of our mutable live data from within the fake repository object and not from outside. This is really good practice to have to do some information hiding and encapsulation. So live data, this is of type live data string, and it's going to only have a getter, so this is get only property, and we are going to simply return current random fruit name, and it's going to be automatically cast to live data instead of mutable live data. This is the underlying current random fruit name, and as you can see, this is what we are gonna use in the first text view, which will display the random fruit. Yeah, it's not directly from the repository, but rather from a view model. But the view model will simply only get the data from our repository. So once we have the repository created, creating the view model will go like a breeze. Now let's go back to the fake repository and let's create an init block, which is something basically like a constructor. So whenever the fake repository instance is created, this init block will run. And over here, we want to set our mutable live data's current random fruit name value to be equal to fruit names. And we want to get the first, which is apple. So this is just setting up our current random fruit name. And then we also want to have a function for get random fruit name, which is going to return a string. And basically we are just going to create a random. So Java random from Java util, instantiate it. And we are going to simply return fruit names. And we want to get the random fruit name at index, which is random.nextInt, and we want to set the upper bound to be fruit names dot size, so that we don't get any invalid array index exceptions. We're gonna use this function inside this fake repository in the next function that we are going to write here, and also in the view model directly. So this is really just some helper function, this get random fruit name. And then the last function inside this repository will be change current random fruit name. And this will simply get the current random fruit name and set its value to be equal to get random fruit name, and that's it. Now let's create main view model, which is going to be a class. So new Kotlin file or a class, it's gonna be a class, and its name will be main view model. It's gonna inherit from view model. So let's import the view model from the proper package. And we are gonna have current random fruit name even in this view model, which will be of type live data string, just like inside our repository. And we are going to only have a getter inside here, and the getter will simply get the value directly from fake repository. So this current random fruit name inside our view model will also respond to changes which happen on the repository's current random fruit name. We also want to have a function which will handle the button click, which signals that we should change the random fruit. So fun on change random fruit click. And this will simply call fake repository dot change current random fruit name. And these are the properties and also the function which is referenced inside our main activity layout file. So this is the property current random fruit name for the first text view, and then this first button has this onClick, which calls onChange random fruit click, which is precisely the function which we have just created inside our view model. So let's get back to our view model. And now we are going to add a property for two-way data binding. So let's add it first, and then I'm going to explain what it all does. So edit text content. It's equal to mutable live data of type string. And also instantiate this mutable live data. And because this is used for two-way data binding, we need to have an attribute that says that this edit text content property is bindable. And wow, I have just realized that I have forgotten about something really important inside the build.gradle, but that is no big deal because we can always change it. So right inside Android, all the way down, we need to add one thing here, which is data binding, and set it to be enabled by setting the enable to be true. And now what we are going to do is hit the sync now. And after all of this is synced, we should be able to use the attribute inside main view model. So this add bindable will be actually working. And yes, we can now hit Alt Enter and import the bindable attribute, and all is nice and fine. So this is the value used for two-way data binding, and as I am saying probably already for the third time, when the value changes in the code, it will be shown on the screen. When the user changes the value which is written inside the UI, it's also going to be changed inside this property. And because we are using this property for two-way data binding, we need to expose it as mutable live data, because otherwise the layout won't be able to access the value property of mutable live data, which is sad that we really need to expose mutable live data, but hey, if it's gonna save us some time and effort, why not? However, if you aren't using two-way data binding, I would always suggest that you don't expose mutable live data directly, but that you only expose live data to outside classes, because that's just going to make your code much safer. Alright, now let's create another pair of properties for displayed edit text content. So we are again going to have only a private mutable live data. So displayed edit text content. And it's gonna be equal to mutable live data of type string, and also instantiate it over here. And then we are gonna have a public displayed edit text content. So let's just copy and paste the name in here, and it's going to be of type live data, also string, if I could spell. And it's going to only have a getter, just like what we have inside the repository. This is the same concept, that we are only exposing the live data, and the getter will simply return displayed edit text content. This is the live data that will reflect whatever is inside the edit text content when we press the button here, this display edit text content button. When this is pressed, the value of our displayed edit text content property will be changed. And the value will be changed right inside this function, which name is on display edit text content click. And whenever the button is clicked, we are simply gonna set the value of display edit text content value, not val, to be equal to edit text content dot value. So we only set the value here, and data binding takes care of showing this new value in the UI. This is the function which is called from our data bindings layout from this button here. So view model on display edit text content click. And again, you can get the code from the link in the video description and then examine it more thoroughly. And then the last function, which is for the last button inside our layout, which simply takes some value, some random fruit value, and it sets it to be displayed inside our edit text by changing the edit text content. This function's name is onSelect random edit text fruit. And it's going to select what it says. So we are gonna say edit text content dot value, and it's gonna be equal to fake repository dot get random fruit name. All right, and now the last thing which we need to do to get this working is to go to our main activity, and over here we need to change some things. So first up, we need to get our main view model from view model providers. And again, check out my fully fledged video on MVVM if you want to learn more about this stuff. So val main view model is going to be equal to view model providers. And we want to get off and of this activity. So this. And from this view model provider, we want to get a view model for the class main view model. So main view model class.java. And this either gets or creates the instance of main view model. So next up, because we are using data binding, we need to have some data binding specific code. We are gonna call data binding util. And on this data binding util, we want to set content view. We want to set it for activity main binding. And this is an automatically generated class because every layout that we have, which has this layout property and data properties, every layout which looks like this, which is a data binding layout, gets a automatically generated class. And the automatically generated class has name activity main, just like the layout file, and then it has this binding appended to the end. So we want to set content view. We also need to specify the activity for which we want to set the content view. And in this case, the activity is this one in which we are currently operating. And the layout which we want to inflate is our .layout .activity main. This data binding util set content view returns an activity main binding object, and on this object we want to set something. So we are gonna call apply, and we want to apply that this .lifecycle owner is this add main activity. This is because of the live data that we are using, and then this view model. And this is simply the variable which we have created inside our layout. So this view model is precisely what we are setting right now in the main activity. And we want to set this view model for the data binding to be equal to our main view model, which we have gotten right above. And now the last few lines for main activity class, we are gonna utilize the power of live data again, and we are gonna call main view model .edit text content, and we want to observe it. So whenever this edit text content changes, we also need to set the lifecycle owner and observer. And whenever this edit text changes, we want to make a toast. So toast .make text, and if you want to make toasts in a more concise manner when you are using Kotlin and not do this crazy long call for making a really simple toast, you can check out my tutorial on Enco library, which is really an awesome library, but I don't have this included in this tutorial because it's not about Enco after all, so check it out by clicking on the card in the corner. And the context for making text is this activity. The content for this toast is it, which is the string which we get from edit text content because we are observing it. And as you can see, it here, it is an implicit parameter of type string, which is the content of edit text content, the value of it. And then we also want to set the length of the toast. So toast not text to speech, but toast dot length short, because short is enough. And we also want to show the toast. Awesome. Now let's run this app inside the emulator. Alright, so here we are inside the app and let's test it out. When we press change fruit, the fruit changes just like we expect. When we type something inside this edit text, so hello, the two-way data binding obviously works because we are observing the edit text content right over here inside our main activity, and then we are displaying toast. And whenever we change the text in the edit text, also the underlying edit text content live data changes, as we can see by this displayed toast. So we can also just get this edit text content and display it below by setting the displayed edit text content to be equal to the edit text content which we get from the edit text by two-way data binding. And then we also can select random fruit for edit text. It's gonna be changed. We can also see that change reflected by this toast down here. And then we can also update the text view below by displaying edit text content, and it says grapes. So I think that this works, and yeah, that's about it for this tutorial. To get the code and go over it at your own pace, you can get it from the link in the video description, which is gonna take you to resocoder.com. If you don't want to miss more tutorials like this, subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell button so that you're gonna be notified about all of my new videos. If this tutorial helped you to understand one-way and two-way data binding together with live data and all of that stuff, give this video a like and also share it. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments, follow me on social media, and see you in the next video.